In the search for answers. No, not answers. In the search for clarity. A human being makes many assumptions. No, not assumptions, presumptions. A human life is structured on the flimsiest of evidence. A baby is born and experiences what it must accept as true. The baby gets bigger and infers bigger, unprovable truths from what is already known. Soon, these inferences expand into a range of systems of thought and religions and ideologies, and all kinds of strange faiths and beliefs, culturing the utterly arrogant, speculative presumption that is adult human existence. This is no more obvious than in the world of movies, another sort of ritualized belief system, and what you are arguably watching now. Have you ever heard someone come out of a theater and proclaim that the movie was okay, but the story lacked redemption, complaining that it was patchily clustered and unfocused and took a long time to get started, and then seemed to rush and collapse upon itself, never resolving in a pointedly satisfying way? Redemption. To redeem. To buy back. Some people think Jesus Christ bought back all the world's sin with his suffering, and others think the purchase of a movie ticket means they're owed some sort of emotional finality worth at least the price of admission. Which is why they're gamblers. Faith-based, presumptuous gamblers, hoping something is true against the flimsiest of evidence with the purpose of gain and the risk of loss. The loss is all but guaranteed, of course. Redemption isn't a measurable property like mass in a thermodynamic system. Movies don't owe you anything. The system is leaky and loss is inevitable because there's too many unknowns. Here's a story to illustrate. Once, not long ago, a man was on a lake, relaxing on a dock, staring at the starry sky, which was all that could be seen. There was the distant hoot of an owl, and another owl. Two beautiful, mysterious birds communicating in some secret language. No, not secret, that's a presumption. A language unknown to the man, yet perfectly sensible to the birds, communicating across the lake. It was beautiful, peaceful. It set his mind at ease. It made him think big thoughts, huge thoughts, gigantic, massive, universal, necessary thoughts. Yes, it was beautiful. Until necessity struck. Dinner was served. The night wasn't as beautiful then. It wasn't not as beautiful either. It was just a bit more real. A bit less real. The man got up and went inside. He didn't want to think about it anymore. Plus he had to pee. He'd been holding his urine because it was so nice out. The beauty made him forget his swollen bladder. But now he felt small, and his bladder felt huge. He was crushed by the weight of it. Compared to his bladder and the infinite night sky, he felt small and pathetic. Nothing more than a pissy little speck encompassed by millions and billions and trillions of other specks, upon 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 specks. Another illustration. In movies, sounds can evoke sounds that do not exist, like the sound of a void, or objects exploding and crashing in outer space where there's no air molecules to carry vibrations that humans identify as sound. While vibrations can travel on interstellar gas, the sounds of space are way below the range of human hearing. Like an owl flying silently to catch its prey, no flap of the wing or rustle of the feather heard. The sound is still there, yet it's so imperceptible it cannot be called sound at all. For the sake of argument, because it is humans who are doing the calling, the presumption of human perspective. Simulated sounds are used when the point is not the point, to assert a new position, or to tell a story, or to build out a speculative space, like the expanding universe, a space without space, more an idea than a space at all, a space that surrounds you without giving itself to you, like the view from inside your eyelids, the back of your eyelids when shut, glowing with the muted flutter of light, a darkness with detail. Here's another story. There once was a couple. In a search for clarity, they went on vacation, spending a weekend camping and hiking where there was a pleasant and tractable mountain range. It was nothing like the West Coast, but had reasonable, sturdy climbs for reasonable, sturdy people who would shortly return to a city where business awaited. She worked in finance, and he was a voice actor. Or maybe she was a lawyer and he was a cinematographer. In any case, they hiked a medium-sized mountain. They reached the summit, and the view was beautiful. They took a rest, ate red apples and Luna bars, closed their eyes to the sun, and mentally prepared to do it again in reverse. Going down was less fun. They quickly became tired and cranky and couldn't help spoil an otherwise fine day, arguing whether Scarlett Johansson was better in Lucy or Under the Skin or Ghost in the Shell or Her. They agreed none of these films were great. It was merely a stupid question of which film Johansson was better in, considering she always played an android type who couldn't be judged by human standards of performance. A savvy career move, said the woman to the man. Well, I like Lucy best, said the man. You would, said the woman. You love Morgan Freeman. The man was taken aback at her presumption. He had never expressed a love for Morgan Freeman, although he appreciated the fellow's reassuring drawl, and he very much agreed when people said he sounded like the voice of God. Such a melodious, believable voice with an incredible range. The woman thought this was racialized thinking, was how she put it, wondering who's God exactly. She argued it was a reassuring, constructed fantasy to have a gentle and pure black man as today's operative God. She called this thinking out as some Bruce Almighty bullshit, asking, do you think Charlton Heston would have taken orders from Morgan Freeman in 1956, let alone 2018? The man said, no, of course not. But it's about the quality of voice and the power of delivery. The movies are a free space. In a free space with free men and women, he quickly added, black can be white, white can be black. It's free. Details shouldn't matter. The voice is just a voice that evokes godliness. It doesn't matter that it's Morgan Freeman specifically. I mean, don't we want spaces like this? He practically pleaded. Liberated, empathetic spaces, free of strife and petty human concerns. Safe spaces. The woman wasn't convinced. She called it all fantasy, or at the very best, science fiction. He called her negative. She said his positivity was so much white noise. They never resolved their disagreement. They went back to the city and continued doing what they do. The man began researching a new digital video camera, a risky yet exciting investment which he hoped would jumpstart his increasingly outmoded career. The couple may have broken up, or they may have kept together. It was the type of story that's been going on since the dawn of man. Patterns recurring with only slight variation. A limited range of possibilities, perhaps not even a range, just the appearance of range. Like Olympus Mons on Mars, the solar system's tallest mountain, it's so huge, it's its own range. It's so tall, it towers above the planet's raging dust storms, immune to the chaos below. It's beyond human scale. It's where the gods relax.
There's the computer store over there, huh? Hard drives, more hard drives, surveillance equipment.
In the center of New York City, there is a place within a place known as the largest non-chain photo and video store in the United States. Inside is the beating heart of audio-visual supply and demand, where a circulatory system of conveyor belts winds hither and thither, loaded with high-tech products, operated by green-vested employees who scurry like elves or angels across the noisy floor, frenetically operating the lifts and pulleys of commerce. Management has been known not to be kind to these workers, yet this place is considered a heaven by many, and within there is an altar. They call it the digital kiosk, a ring of desire where men, mostly men, exult in the presence of the latest, greatest digital video cameras. Here, there is an infinity of features on display, specs upon specs upon specs crammed into the freshest, hardest, and most hummingest ergonomic camera bodies, free to be groped and pawed and taken for a spin before being consumed alive. The customers stare lustily at each other through the cameras, which are mounted on fluid heads in a circle, separated by what was once a strange model city serviced by a model train, recently replaced with the scale model of the Empire State Building, into the miniature windows of which these men trained their greasy lenses, fiddling and testing and praying to their gods that perhaps this device, this specific, newly forged vessel from the future, will be the one to bring it all to life. A life more real than life itself, replayed on demand. This is the desire upon which they are focused. Indeed, at the center of New York City, there is a place within a place, a closed and constructed universe where aging men, mostly men, fantasize about living without the loss, the risk, the desolation that one day soon they too, like all that passes, will be nothing but a speck of inconsequential dust.
Back in the corner, every accessory you can imagine. Again, above your head, the conveyor system that carries everything throughout the entire store, including...
Of course, what is wrong with being a speck of dust? That is a major presumption. No one has articulated, particularly, the problem of being a particle. Some argue that life as a particle would be uncomplicated and free, a free-floating radical life. No more abuses suffered at the hands of management, no more discrimination for one's gender or the color of one's skin, or whatever inequities haunt the human form. A speck of dust is more or less free.
Pro video cases.
Or is it? They say these new cameras can pick up the tiniest of details, that these days not even a dust mite across the galaxy can escape scrutiny, granted a shape it didn't know it had or even wanted. Is there any place in the universe free from judgment? Representation through technological force, like this new James Webb Space Telescope, making the invisible visible through redshift. Red Raven, Canon Mark IV, Panasonic GH5, Sony Cine Alta, Blackmagic Ursa Mini. These men loved the Blackmagic Ursa Mini. They huddled around it like moths to the flame. All cavemen, they could hardly bear it. 15 stops of dynamic range, 4.6K of organic raw resolution for the cosmic price of $5,995, accessories not included. And that's history already. By next year, 6K, 8K, 3D, VR, AI. Okay, for every mini, there is a major. The men could never compete. It's written in the stars. In the digital kiosk, one of the cavemen who had recently returned from the mountains had no idea the lens cap was on. He had no idea what he was looking at, whether it was good or bad, why the values were all messed up. He thought it could be the settings, another tech spec overlooked in the back pages of the manual. He spent a long time mashing buttons, turning dials, and squinting his beady eyes. He racked his brain. He was so long lost in confusion, he forgot why he was there. He began to accept that the camera was beyond his comprehension, that he must accept what it offered, which is nothing. Yet it felt like everything. His sensitivity buzzed electric, and he understood this was a reckoning. In fact, the resolution was no less had he been gazing at the sun, And like the sun's impossible surface, the dynamic range would have no boundary, a vast density of particles communing in nuclear fusion before breaking free to penetrate the atmosphere like the northern lights. It felt as if the camera was speaking to him with pure candor, transforming the negative into positive and creating itself in its own image. Yes, the promise was real. He realized he had all he needed. There was no reason to shoot anything. Why open himself to the risk of exposure like those guileless penguins or eager documentary filmmakers marching through Antarctica, freezing and suffering in order to reproduce all over again, false agents of free will? Would he be part of this? He already was. He was looking Kay in the eye, and the voice of God was inside him. He had found his safe space at last. He had nothing to fear, nothing to hide, and nothing to show. He never uncovered the lens cap, and it never mattered. He went home without buying anything, redeeming nothing, blessedly content, at least for the moment, to remain virtually a speck of dust.